All right, real talk. Whether I'm gearing up for a tough workout or preparing for an episode of The Cameron Brown Show, I need to be locked in. And that's where A-Bomb Energy comes in play. This stuff isn't just another energy drink. It was actually created by an Army Special Ops combat medic who wanted something better, something that actually helps you think clearer, focus longer, and retain information, not just give you a quick caffeine spike. And I can tell you, it really works. I've been drinking A-Bomb before I hit the gym, and it's like flipping a switch. My focus is on point, my energy is steady, and I don't get that crash afterward. Same when I'm recording this podcast. I need to be sharp, engaged, and A-Bomb helps me stay in the zone. Plus, it actually tastes great. So if you're looking for something that gives you a real mental and physical edge, go check them out at abombenergy.com. And when you order, just type Cameron in the notes so they know that I sent you. Trust me, you're going to feel the difference. Welcome on.
Thanks for having me.
Richard. God, it's been kind of a long time coming. Really should have done this a while ago. But I appreciate you hopping on.
No time like the present.
No time like the present. So just a quick introduction, and we're going to go through a lot of this here shortly. But Richard and I have known each other for 2 years now.
2 or 3 years. Yeah, probably 2 years.
2 to 3 years.
About as long as, because Justin introduced us.
Yeah. When did Ethos open its stores?
3 years.
Okay,
yeah.
So 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then so you and Dom started dating.
Mm-hmm.
We all went to Dubai, and the rest is history.
That's pretty crazy. We've been to Dubai together.
It's kind of cool.
It's wild.
I
place.
I barely knew you, and I was like, oh, I'm going to Dubai with these. Well, frankly, you and Dom. I barely knew you.
Yeah, we're
and
kind of
Dom.
all strangers.
We're all going to Dubai together. It's like, this is great.
It was a cool trip.
It was a super cool trip.
Super fun.
But you are, so on top of your role, so with Ethos, you are technically the CFO. Is that your title? So CFO at Ethos, and you also run your own practice. You work with a number of different clients on the financial side of things and do accounting work for them. You're also a part of a band called the Carls. You play bass for them.
I do. Yeah.
Do you play any other instruments?
I play cello and guitar as well.
Y'all don't ever whip out the cello for the Carls, do you?
I've played one wedding, not with the Carls. No, I've played one wedding in the last couple years, and then other than that, it kind of sits in the corner, unfortunately.
And you've always played cello?
Since I was 11. Yeah.
Cool.
So
that was my instrument in elementary school and middle school. Well, elementary school, and then I stopped in middle school. Nice. So one thing I kind of regret is not sticking with instruments and having people on the podcast and the show and talking about like their musical talents and the instruments they
do. A lot of people that you have on have musical talents.
The last guy Matt Vodek is the front man for Wilmot. Yeah, you know Matt.
Yeah.
And Justin, and I feel like there's plenty of other people, but people still they stick with an instrument for their life, and I'm like, this is incredible that you actually still have this talent, and I have lost it completely, and I feel like I'm out of the club. There's
I think you just got to get an acoustic guitar. I think that's the best way to either acoustic guitar or a keyboard for most people, and I think you can do so much with those two things, and to me, it's just meditative. I mean, how good you are and stuff is irrelevant. It's like the ability to pick up an instrument, and to me, it's a different language. Right. It's like it's meditative when you can jam with other people. Like even if you just know a few chord shapes and play with someone else, it's a completely different. It's a different type of conversation, and
absolutely,
it opens up a different layer of connection that you can have with someone. And some of the coolest interpersonal connections I've had are with people I just played music with, even outside of the band. So band is, we can get into that a little bit, but band practice, band playing, performing is very different from jamming and more creative pursuits in music, I think, and both are very rewarding and fulfilling, but in different ways, I think.
I just like that we're jumping right into music, and we'll cover all the business and other stuff later.
We can do that later, yeah.
But
I love music.
But to your point, the musical stuff has always been intriguing to me, but also from a creative outlet perspective. During the pandemic, I kind of got into it as well with a friend of mine who was super musically talented, and I just go over to his house and I'd sing and he would play, and we kind of produced random stuff, and it was never good. It was just fun to connect in that way. Yeah, which I feel like everybody connects differently, but connecting over music and just jamming out is a very unique way of connecting, and it's very different too.
There's also like there's zero stress involved in it either, because you're not at practice. You don't have to be perfect. You're just like, hey man, I'm gonna sing this. I need you to follow along or produce whatever you want to produce, whatever it feels like, and go from there. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was kind of it was definitely an outlet, that in the gym during the pandemic, because the rest of the time we were just cooped up and couldn't do anything else.
Exactly.
Really.
Yeah.
At least felt that.
No, totally. I think there's like a little bit of apprehension when you are jamming with someone, especially if you've never jammed. Even with people I have, like Justin and I jam a little bit, and outside of the Carlson, we when you first pick up the guitar together and you're like, all right, what are we gonna play?
Yep.
And like once you find that groove and you like dive into it, you can close your eyes and open up an hour later and you've been playing the whole time, and it's like this release.
Right.
It's such a cool, and your brain just lights up from it. It's super cool.
Do you, when it comes to your music too, I think I asked Matt this question actually the other week, as it relates to like, do you drink a beer or do you like do something to like relax your mind and get yourself into a certain state? You don't, if there's certain things you want to talk about, sure. But if there's, but in general, is there something that you like do to get into that meditative state that then allows you to dive deeper and connect deeper when you are playing music?
Yeah. Any nootropic kind of protocol. So, tea, coffee, all types of mushrooms. Like there's different ways to like, especially like lion's mane is like very good for like just like waking up the brain. Right. One of my favorite things on the weekends is wake up with a cup of black coffee, like usually a pour over or something a little bit stronger, and sit down and start doing like backing tracks and stuff on YouTube with some jazz or blues. And it's a complete, like after a week of using your brain with work and like more administrative and just kind of like your daily tasks, it's a completely different way of using the brain, right? And it's just like you feel it light up in a completely different way, and
that's cool.
Like I can do that for a couple hours and just feel like you just feel
alive.
Fresh. Alive. Yeah, exactly.
With work, and obviously we both have had long days today, so you're kind of coming into this it's like a change of pace, a change of environment of sorts. But I feel like nootropics have been really good for me as well. More so, I kind of refer back to the energy drink too a little bit. I do not have one of them with me today, unfortunately. But it's filled with nootropics and then also caffeine. Yeah. So it's like I get a little bit of a spike, but at the same time I feel like focused and like and more locked on it. Yeah. Awakens the brain without the crash of the caffeine.
Yeah. Nootropics to me, like I really got turned on to them maybe I'd probably say 2 to 3 years ago. Yep. And I was starting like really getting focused on my accounting practice, and was just downing coffee. Like I had like one of those like old school pots of coffee that I would brew. Probably do like 10 cups of coffee and no other kind of supplements on top of that. So I just felt really jittery all day. I just poured over ice and just go to town, but it definitely has like diminishing returns. Yep. And when I think it was actually Justin like turned me on to tea having like theanine in it, and then supplementing with L-theanine and like lion's mane, and other like reishi and chaga, like other turkey tail, like other mushrooms, and it made a huge difference. I started taking like mud water at that time. Cool. And
are you still drinking that?
No.
Would you mind real quick, just the microphone point just a little bit closer, and like you can pull it a little bit down if you want to as well. But wherever, right there.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, solid.
And it's always the worst when you go back and you're like, we could have made that adjustment. Just like
might as well make it now. Yeah, exactly. Just let me know if there's anything else. No, the taste was big for me. Like it's a very strong, you either like it or you don't. And I took it for a while, but it was just like, it's very strong taste. They're also very like anti-coffee, which I'm not as like, I like coffee. Right. I love my coffee. Like I love making different types of coffee. I love mocha pot and espresso and all of that. So it's not my goal to give up coffee. And that's kind of like their entire brand is give up coffee because it's so bad for you. And Cheetah Latte, I don't know if you heard of that, but it's a really cool local guy that Rob that owns it, and it's meant to be an additive to your coffee. Okay. And it's like he makes it with like instantized coffee, like espresso, like powderized espresso, but it also has lion's mane and the mushrooms and everything. So that was like a good addition for a while as well. And I just have failed to reorder it, but
Gotcha.
I liked it a lot.
There's so many different different brands and supplements and things that people are constantly trying out and trying to figure out what's the best fit for them too. Like we were talking about it earlier with change of pace here, kind of to a certain degree, but with like Guinness, like some people just don't do well with certain drinks and with certain supplements. I think it can take a while to really figure out what's best for you. I had Dr. Sogol Ash on just recently. She's a holistic doctor. And we talked a lot about this particular topic where it's like, hey, there's so many different things out there, and what might be good for one person might not be great for another.
Mm-hmm.
You've really got to figure that out, though. The best way to do that is, frankly, to go have be studied first, like analyze your blood and better understand what your makeup is, so that you can then go and actually get the right things for yourself. Yeah. Where I've been super stubborn and just taking shit just to be like, well, that didn't work. But we talked a lot about nootropics on that podcast, and we also talked about coffee and the mold in coffee. And it's one of those things that I was seeing kind of like pushed around on social media, and I was like, oh, mold in coffee, like what do you mean? Like my coffee's not moldy. And I was like, but there's mold everywhere, and there's mold in all of our houses in Charleston, South Carolina. I was like, it's literally everywhere. But if you think about coffee sitting around and then getting mold on it, and then you go brew it, and especially in plastic or aluminum, right, it's probably not great for you. Yeah. And so we talked a lot about that, where it's like the coffee itself is, it's coffee. Yeah. But when the coffee has the extra stuff in it, you really should like look out for it.
Interesting.
Be aware of that.
So, yeah, how would you? Does that also apply to like tea, like loose leaf teas and stuff like that?
That's
it probably applies
I think
to
it opens
everything.
Pandora's box to a certain degree of like
how
when these things are being sourced, how are they being stored, and then from there, how are they being transported to? Yeah. So think about like the supply chain of these different foods that we are consuming, and or coffee beans, whatever, tea leaves, etc. But especially with coffee, it sits in a warehouse, gets on a ship, most likely coming from Costa Rica or wherever it comes from. Yep. And then gets delivered here, and then it sits at somebody's coffee shop for a little while. If that's in a damp environment, at some point there's probably going to be some mold growth on those coffee beans. Right. But there are certain brands, and she actually mentioned them, I don't remember their names, that are actively trying to get away from the mold, and or I guess clean their bean. I don't know how you clean a bean. Sure. But doing that,
probably some kind of process,
whatever that process is. But that apparently is that's like that negative impact that mold is having on your life. It's actually, you're consuming it on a daily basis.
That's really interesting.
Also consuming plastics. So
plastic's been something I've been like almost hyper focused on and actively trying to get away from. Like we had a bunch of plasticware, like dishes and bowls that just kind of like carried over from like our previous apartments and stuff, that I've been like actively like, okay, we're getting rid of those and like going to all glass there. But then it's like you do become like not over, but like you become very aware of
hyper aware.
Yeah, exactly. Of my Nespresso is made of plastic, and from what I've heard and read, it's like it's really the heat exposure with plastic. It's like the combination of the two that makes a big detrimental difference. And, so it's just trying to get away from those things.
We Nicole has completely swapped out all of our plastics with glass, and so same thing. But then I have a plastic filter that filters the water that comes into the house, that then goes into another plastic filter that I then drink from. It's not being heated up necessarily, and the water that comes in is the cold water that goes into that filter. I'm assuming that's the reason for it, because if you put hot water into it, that hot water would probably end up melting away that plastic. Yep. But we had a plastic cap on one of her glass jars that fell off in the dishwasher and got stuck at the bottom, and it melted. And we were sitting here, and we started smelling. I was like, what is that smell? I was like, that is awful. And so I got up, and we were looking everywhere for it. Like, what's running in the house right now? The dishwasher. Pulled it all out, and it completely melted on the bottom of the dishwasher.
Oh my gosh.
And the inhalation of whatever that was, I was like, this is going to kill me. Yeah. I feel like I'm
probably
dying.
get a headache from it at least.
Exactly. I mean, actually, I did. And so we opened all the doors, and it took forever to clean. But I'm like, if even a little bit of that is getting into us on like, if we're microdosing that on a daily basis, that's got to be awful for us.
Yeah, I think we're gonna probably there probably are gonna be some studies that we're gonna find when we're 35, 40 that
if
are
we
gonna
make it
there. If we make it there.
Because of all the plastic.
I mean, one thing I've heard a lot about is just like fertility rates going down with men, and that's something that definitely worries me, because I'm like, in our parents' generation, it seems like they could just accidentally have a baby,
whip them out.
Yeah, and then you hear about perfectly healthy couples now that are active, they eat healthy and everything, and they're trying to have kids and they can't, or they have to be very aware of the protocols they're taking to be able to have them. It's like, that's weird to me.
So unfortunately, so many friends of mine that are going through and going to the IVF route because there's nothing else that's working.
That's crazy.
And I think it's the older you get, the more you appreciate your ability to have a child. You're a kid, you're like, whatever.
You're warned not to, for good reasons.
Right. You're kind of almost thinking like, oh, like maybe that's a good thing, so I don't have children right now. And you're like, but then later on, you're like, I want kids.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready for kids.
Yeah.
And your body and,
and there's a window.
And there's a window. And so all of that, which, women know all about, and guys are kind of slow to figure that out, but we do.
For sure.
We get there eventually. But it is actually not on like a morbid note, but it's really, really sad having those conversations with people and then being like, we've been trying for 4 years.
Yeah. I don't think that was an issue. It doesn't seem like that was really an issue before. I hadn't heard of that. Maybe we were just maybe a little bit. I think there's elements of many aspects of our health where like how much of this, like mental health is a good one too. Like how much of this we're like just unaware of or didn't have open conversations about for a long time. And now we're having so many open conversations. It seems like there's this spike in mental health crises and stuff. But then also there's certainly a spike in general because of maybe compounding issues between nutrition and environment and all of the world events.
I think we're just we're very aware of like mental health issues, but this is also one of those things too that kind of does get to me where there I don't really know what the percentage is of the population that uses like that mental health issue as like a crutch of sorts.
Sure.
Where you're like, I don't know what that percentage is. I really don't. And
it's not zero.
And I hate to even say that.
Yeah.
But you're kind of like, you are a very well functioning adult that now found out in your mid 30s that you have a health issue or you're on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But like you have $1 million company or whatever. It's like you might be on the spectrum, but you've been doing well. So whatever's been working for you is probably working fine. Good to identify it, but to your point, it's like now all these stats have blown up. It's like, are all these people that have these are on the spectrum or have these health issues or whatever it is it because we're just hyper aware of it now and everybody wants to go get tested and feel like they're a part of it, or is there something else going on?
That's a good point. I mean, as like I've definitely struggled like myself with depression, anxiety, like all growing up and even as an adult do deal with it. But there's a certain point, are you like hyper aware and focused on it? And using it as a crutch and the biggest thing for me is, do you identify with it? Right. So I think that is probably the more detrimental point that people get to is when they discover that they have this thing, they identify with that thing rather than it just being like, I have a freckle here. Right. Like obviously depression can be worse than having a freckle, but yes, it's the identity with that as like, this is who I am that can, and I know from experience that can compound if you get into that dark place and you're like, I'm in this dark place, this is who I am, it becomes almost like self-fulfilling and you have to pull yourself out of it. And it is not easy to do. It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of support from other people too, and some people don't necessarily have that support. But to your point, there's like, is it a hyper focus as a society as a whole? And what are you doing about it? Like, what are you doing with that information?
I also did not approach this conversation well at all. Just to refer to it as a crutch is not a great starting point. Let's put it that way. What I meant, and I think what we were kind of going with that from a statistical perspective is that now it's like, it seems like everybody's got something. And I think it's just because everybody's going and getting tested, or their doctors telling them they have something or whatever it is. So as it relates to the depression and anxiety side of things, like my mom, and I've just always been told that they're like, you've got anxiety. I was like, no, I don't. Like, what is that? Like, I don't have anxiety. Sure. As I've grown up, I've realized, I absolutely do. And it can compound and it can turn into that kind of that depressive state. Which is really hard for a guy to admit to. When you're like, I'm not. No, absolutely not. But it's like when it runs in your family, when like you do your research. You're like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. I need to identify this and then attack it head on. So that's been super difficult for me, for the record. But also, when you go into it, I think my biggest frustration with this is like modern health system. You go into the doctor, you explain these things, and then they're like, "Oh, you're going to go on an antidepressant immediately."
Right.
And you're thinking to yourself, "There's nothing else."
Yep.
Like you've known me for 15 minutes. I've discussed this one on another podcast.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know me.
Yeah.
Like, but you're gonna prescribe something because Big Pharma told you to.
Yeah.
And that's what they taught you in school was the way to, you are addressing the symptoms, you're not addressing the root problem.
Exactly.
So that's my biggest frustration with all that, right?
I totally agree. I mean, I've been lucky that I'm stubborn enough to where like I probably don't go to the doctor enough, and I do go to therapy. I'll be open about that, but like I've been pretty anti. I don't want to take a pill, and I recognize that pill is probably the only reason that some people are able to even have a semblance of pulling themselves out. Like I think if someone is like chronically depressed, chronic anxiety, and they can't even get out of bed, if that pill is the difference between getting out of bed and starting to like just get some forward momentum. But you have to be so aware of like you have to be working with a health practitioner, a therapist of some sort, whether it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, to guide you in that process. If you get someone that's just like, here's a pill and this is your life now, and you're not working to see like, okay, what's the minimum effective dose? Like what other things do I need to be doing on top of this? It's like any other medicine, Ozempic with weight loss, like maybe that is the difference between someone losing 0 pounds and going into a more morbidly obese state, or having a good starting point that they can use other protocols to eventually get off of that drug.
Absolutely.
And I think, that it bleeds into everything, and that minimum effective dose concept also bleeds into everything. It bleeds into life. It bleeds into medicine. It bleeds into any significant change that you're trying to make. What's the smallest effort I can make to make the biggest amount of difference?
I mean, if you're 150 pounds overweight, Ozempic's probably a great starting point to like kickstart things. I didn't say that. That's not my suggestion to go take Ozempic. But like, if you're going to try to kickstart the machine that's going to get you rolling in the right direction, sure. But then from there, you also have to address your workout habits. You have to address your eating habits, your sleeping, your sleep routine, the amount of sun you're taking. Like, there's just so many other aspects to it.
Because your body fights to always go back to homeostasis, it's likely that if you start with any dose of something and you don't do anything outside of that, you're only going to have to increase the dose over time to get the same effect. So the only way to fight that homeostasis is to take the smallest dose, so you're not reliant on it, and to give yourself a pathway out to where eventually that dose can actually decrease or be eliminated. When we're talking about like a drug or something that could have adverse side effects, there's certain things that probably don't have adverse side effects, like exercise. Like you want to do the minimum effective dose of exercise. You don't overtrain, or you don't get injured, but you probably never want to like eliminate exercise. Like you want to find that perfect balance of anything that you're implementing in your life. So yeah,
100%. So that's the health side of this conversation.
The last thing I'll say,
you were a bodybuilder too.
I was.
You're gonna add one more. I'm gonna let you add that one thing. We're gonna do that.
The last thing I was gonna say is just like, as men, I think that it's sometimes hard to open up about mental health. I mean, I think that people discount a man's point of view on depression, anxiety. Like, what could you possibly, you're two white males, like what could you possibly have going on? And I think that's a big kind of part of our like kind of societal debates right now. But I think it affects everyone. I mean, but it is back to your point of using crutches or identifying with things. It's being aware of the problem is the first step to finding a solution to it, and finding support systems that you can be open with, and not being embarrassed of those problems is a huge step forward.
Absolutely, which is being more real about all of it too.
Exactly.
Like, let's be more real, but let's find solutions.
Yeah.
It seems like with everything in our world right now, like all of I go to like war and everything else that's occurring. It seems like we can't all just like come to the table and be very real about what's going on.
Yep.
And then provide immediate solutions. Everybody wants to provide a way to build a new aircraft carrier or a new bomber that's going to go kill somebody faster, and you're like,
Sure.
hey, look, that's probably not the long-term solution. That's probably not a great solution. Let's figure out other things that are actually going to be effective in solving these problems on a soft level and also conventional as well.
And to that point, I think it's easy to say like, oh, there's so many bigger things happening. How like there's a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes with mental health, where you're like, do I even deserve to have this feeling of depression or anxiety when there's people on the other side of the world that are, getting bombed or getting killed or having their homes taken away from them? And I think that's kind of a what do you want to call it? It's a losing game. I mean, I don't know. There's a phrase for it, but it's if you get too caught up in comparison of like, my pain is not significant because someone else is feeling
It's a deep dark
greater
hole.
pain. Yeah, you're basically just pushing it under the rug or pushing it down and never actually dealing with it.
Right.
And that's when it compounds or comes out in adverse ways. Like maybe you are more aggravated at work or like with your spouse or your friends, like you become closed off as a person because you're dealing with these problems within. So it goes back to my point of find the support system, find the people or person that you can be open with and not be embarrassed about the problem and seek help with it. Yeah. Find a path forward.
I think your partner that you choose in life is a huge part of that. Also your friends, especially for us, like your guy friends, and having those solid dudes around you that you can not only be like, hey, I'm going to open up to you about these things and try to not be judged. That's also very difficult to find those people that you can truly trust.
Yep.
But it's super important to find those people that if it is family, it's family. If it's your spouse, it's your spouse. But good to have multiple people you can share those thoughts with. And frankly, that can deal with them differently.
Yep.
Provide you different perspectives and input based off of their experiences too.
Yep.
So it's super important to find good people to surround yourself with that can actually take both sides.
Yeah.
Support you in what's going great and also understand when things are not going great, but then push you back towards
and sometimes give you some tough love and just be like, hey, like just put your head down and do the work right now. Or, find the friends that you can cut up and have fun with. But then if you do need to be like, hey, I'm having a hard time right now, they're still going to be there for you. And that's the key of a good friend versus someone that is, a lot of people can get into these like kind of codependent relationships where the only thing they offer to that relationship is problems, and the other person is almost getting off by trying to solve your problems for you. And that is not a healthy relationship. What's healthy is when you have the good times and the laughs and the fun, and then you can say, hey, I'm having a rough week, having a rough month. And they're like, how can I support you?
Right.
But they're not trying to jump in and solve the problem for
I think
you.
it's also good not to like make it like one person that everything, because like if there's one person that you have to rely on for all of that, so it's a heavy task.
It puts them in a bad
for
spot.
one person.
Yeah,
especially a fixer that wants to make sure that you're doing well, and then you later on realize that was never a good thing for that relationship.
And that is a codependent relationship, and it's not healthy. And it's not that a lot of people get into that, but it can be if you are the caretaker. Yeah. It can be a really easy spot for you to get into and a really hard one to get out of. Yeah. And as the person dealing with problems, it can be easy to accept that help because it feels good in the short term. But if you're not actively solving the problems, you're really just using this other person.
Right.
And this bleeds into like we can start shifting from mental health into like other things, but business is huge with that.
Yep.
Like, and
you also don't want to go into business with people that like, frankly, mental health is a huge. You want to understand the person can actually handle what's coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of stress with business.
There's a lot of stress.
But I have it all the time with as I've advanced in my career and got better at what I do. I have plenty of people asking for help because they're just starting out.
Yeah.
And I'm very willing to give the first few hours of my time for free and help you, especially if you're young, if you're in college, if you're just starting your first business, you have no idea where to go. Yep. I'd love to be that resource. But how many times has that happened where you're like, okay, I've done this. Now what do I do? Now what do I do? Now what do I do? And there's always a problem that I'm having to solve for you because you're now relying on me as the resource rather than even Google.
Which is why your hourly rate's $1,000.
It should be. It should be. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think that is one of the most interesting things about understanding that in business too. For me, especially with now like the pool company, and getting the guys to understand that, like, hey, you might have charged $80 to $100 an hour before for your labor. I was like, but your expertise is worth a lot more than that.
Yep.
And you're going out and you're spending the time on gas and everything else just to get there. You're actually worth closer to $250 to $300 if you think about it. And that mindset shift is a very difficult one for a lot of people to make, but it also gets you around better clients and higher quality clients and people that, once again, doesn't mean you can give stuff away for free all the time. But if people get to that point, it's like, hey, well, just so you're aware, my hourly rate is
exactly.
$1,000.
I think to me, the if I'm gonna charge someone less than that hourly rate, which in my head is like 500, but let's call it 1,000. Like if I'm gonna charge someone less than that, I kind of do consider either doing like a flat project cost that I know I can be very efficient with this project. It might only take me 30 minutes, but it would take you 10 plus hours.
Yep.
I'm going to charge you a full hour for whatever amount of time that I do give you, or I'm going to do this pro bono and like say, hey, I just want to help you out. I'm not actually like even looking for your business. So this is like not transactional. And also this way you can't like come after me until like, this isn't even advice. I'm just like giving you a push to get started. I'm giving you the resources, and that's like a teach a man to fish versus giving him the food, right?
Absolutely.
And, I'm a big believer in that, but it's also a way to like make sure your time's not taken advantage of, or that you do feel like you have to cut someone like a crazy break because you know you can't charge that much for this, but they need a lot of help. So it satisfies both sides. It's like I just know I'm not going to be charging for this, so I can help you as much as because it is coming from the goodness of my heart,
right?
Or from the other side, like I'm going to help you out, I'm going to save you a lot of time, and I'm going to charge you for the value rather than for the hours.
Right. So I think a lot of, like when you're in your early stages of your career or building whatever it is that you're building, a lot of people ask for but don't know how to provide value back. And I think ultimately, if I were to go back 8 years, I would highly suggest to myself that simply offering to buy them a meal, simply offering to, I really want to take you to lunch. I want to take you to dinner.
Right.
I want to buy that coffee for you. Would you mind sitting down with me for an hour?
Yep.
So I can explain, what my problems are, and then you can maybe provide some guidance. So leading with, and I've heard this a million times, but people like struggle to, for whatever reason, put it into action. But leading with that value or that little value, I will buy you this thing for your time, is huge, even if that person doesn't accept it. But it makes them feel like you actually are going to try to
you appreciate the time.
Correct.
Like, just showing respect for that time and expertise. And I mean, we're still young, but I mean, like when I'm thinking about my mentors that I've had that are 50 and 60 years old, like when I was in my 20s, I'm still in my 20s, but early 20s, I could have.
We're not that old yet, man.
Not yet. I got one more year until I'm 30. I'm like,
so do I. I'm like holding on to it for dear life. It's like that one last hair. You're like, yep.
Every day I'm just like, oh no, my back hurts a little bit more.
I keep tearing something like every week. Like my shoulder and my back, and I'd say, it's always something. So,
but no, like I wish someone would give me that advice when I was like in my early 20s, and seeking that advice from anyone. It's like, it's almost insulting when a 20-year-old asks me for my time and they are like, I'll pay you for my time or for your time. Cause I'm like, you can't. Like, I know you don't have, like, if I do an entire project for you, it would be more than what you're trying to just do right now. Right. So it's better for you to say, like, can I buy you a coffee, or I know you're really busy, but can we go to lunch, or can we go to dinner? And maybe you spend $30 on that lunch, but that to me, as the service provider, the consultant, or the advisor in that, is more valuable than you just giving me like $50 for the hour.
Yep.
Because that $50 an hour is discounted.
Right.
10x.
And most likely that person will end up buying your meal for you.
Yeah.
Because they're like, hey, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And
they like, that advisor wants to see that you're excited and committed to this project. So like, just being like, can I buy you lunch? And then I'm there. I'm in a better position to buy you the lunch, and like call it a wash, and like hope the best thing, the way that you can repay that time is not the money or the meal. It's the action that you take afterward, because there's nothing worse as the advisor to give your time to do, like, if someone I'll create a Google sheet for you that you can use for the budget of your startup.
Right.
And you come to me 6 months later and be like, hey, I never opened that Google sheet. You're like, all right, like, why would I give you more time?
Right.
That's more the other side of that is like, hey, I got the Google sheet. Then I took a course on YouTube to learn how to use Google Sheets or Excel, and then wrote this business plan and got someone to like say that they're ready to invest. They just need a term sheet. Can you help me write that? Awesome. Let's do it. Like, if you do that extra legwork and you come back to me and you have, you started with this little like idea and you've brought it into something of substance, that's exciting to me. And then like, I want to keep helping you because I want to see that keep growing.
Right.
If you come back to me and you're like, still just have the Google sheet, didn't even open it. Like, what are we doing?
What am I supposed to do for you? Like, at that point,
I can't do it for you.
You absolutely can't do it for the person. One of my mentors, every single time I see him, and I see him like once a month now for dinner, he is always bringing me something. And I've never been good at it in return. I've never been a really good gift giver, and I've always struggled with that. I'm frustrated by it because I would love to be a good gift giver. I'm
the same way.
I struggle with those ideas. Like, what do I bring you? But it's always like a book that like an admiral or a general or somebody wrote, and he's like, "This is a good friend of mine. I had them sign it. Here you go." I'm like, "That's super cool." Want dinner?
Yeah, right.
And I always feel bad about it, but what he maybe, and I know he knows this, but what he maybe doesn't realize is the impact that's had over the years of like rewiring me to basically try to give as much as I possibly can to other people. Whenever I meet somebody, it's like I am going to try my best to give them something, whether that's a bit of advice or buying the meal or whatever it is. It does long term have that impact. So that's been, he's definitely helped to kind of mold my mind into realizing giving something and not expecting anything in return. Ever. It's huge. That sword, he gave me that sword for graduation. Just like
that one,
random things that I'm just like, that's cool. That's
really cool.
Revolutionary,
revolutionary.
Artifact. It's an officer's sword.
That's insane.
Supposedly the handle. This is up for debate. The vast majority of those handles were made of cow bone. There's a chance that it's made of human bone, which would be kind of sick. But I don't really know how you test it. I guess you need to scrape it and get it tested.
Yeah.
But things like that where like that's not expected from everybody.
Yeah.
But that is
it makes
super memorable.
It makes an impact. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that appreciation for like every time you see that sword. Or I have one of my old clients when I was still personal training, gave me, he was an artist, and I didn't know how good of an artist he was. So I was like, oh, do you do commissions? And he kind of like laughed and said no. And it turns out when I looked up like who he was, it was like, oh, your paintings sell for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, it was insulting for, again, going to the insulting side. It was insulting for me to say, can I commission you? It's like, no, you can't. Like,
not yet, but we're getting there.
Not with what you're charging me. Like, you would have to work 50 sessions to afford like a tenth of a painting. Like, but he actually, like, the next time I went and hung out, I stopped personal training, and then we became good friends through music, actually, going full circle to the music. And the first time I went and saw him and we jammed together, he had like done like a little sketch, and it was like, and I got it framed. He gave me the sketch, and this goes to like appreciating it and showing the respect for the time or what he did give me. It was like he gave me the sketch. To me, that alone was super meaningful. I went the extra mile to get it professionally framed, put it above my desk, so it's like safe and like represented like it should, like it deserves to be. And every time I see that, it makes me like, that's where that like feeling good, giving my time or giving, like, that's what you get, a good feeling from doing that. That's worth more than what they could possibly pay you for.
Well, if that client ever were to see your setup or like walk into your house and like see that it was framed, I mean, you're immediately like, I respect you, and I appreciate you, and they're gonna feel that for sure. It's a lot more special than just putting up a painting. But a little shout out to Jesse Subject, actually a good friend of mine, painted this.
It's beautiful.
And I guess he's kind of in his earlier career, like artistic career. But it was one of those, it was kind of a gift for the house and Nicole for her birthday. And
that's awesome.
And I was like, you know what, this is meaningful. This is cool. Like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I've never been a good artist. So I'm like, I'm definitely not going to paint it. Like, I'm definitely not painting this.
Yeah, exactly.
So whatever it is. So don't expect me to paint it. But anyways, giving is one of those things. We could do full 4 hours on properly
And
giving.
to your
and
point,
getting
like
better about
I'm a
giving.
bad giver compared to what I've been given, but it's something that, there's a piece of who you strive to be versus who you actually can be every day. Like there's all of us should have a higher standard of what we're actually able to accomplish and just keep striving for better. But yeah, I agree. We could probably write a book about giving.
About giving.
But it's important, and it's important to recognize what you've been given and have the appreciation for that, and then pay it forward. Paying it forward is the best way to pay it back, essentially, is having the value of what other people have given you and know that you can give the same with little effort on your end, and it feels so much better in return.
Of course. Yeah, I love it. So I was going to go to bodybuilding next.
Sure.
But before I do that, you mentioned earlier that certain podcasts rub you the wrong way, certain introductions, certain things.
Sure, yeah.
So let's cover that real quick, because I feel like that's super necessary.
Yeah.
Especially as this has kind of evolved for me, and I'm trying to figure out what I want, my lane to be, or what I want it to look like long term. I really don't have any idea. I just enjoy doing this. Yeah. So what about modern day podcasts? What about podcasts piss you off?
We were talking about introductions, like having this, there's a certain podcast that we both listen to that has this introduction that the introduction doesn't make sense. It's like an edgy intro, like a cliche, like saying, and it doesn't, when you actually break it down, it's like that. It's kind of like motivational garbage. Yeah. And I think there's just too much of that in general. Like I think every podcast that's like mindset, like champion, entrepreneurship, all of this, it can be so watered down.
There's only one David Goggins. Let's just be completely honest. We don't really need 50 million of them.
It can just be too watered down, and it's people trying to be other podcasters rather than trying to be themselves. Like I think whether you like them or not, the Joe Rogan podcast, like the reason it's so wildly successful is that it is purely to like Joe having a conversation with the person across from him, and that is like all he cares about. Lex Friedman's another podcast I do like that's like he's at the end of the day trying to get to a feeling of connection between the person across from him, breaking down barriers between and like kind of like preconceived notions of who this person is, and get down to like what do they actually think over a 2 to 3 hour long form conversation. And that's what I really appreciate about it, because he has no bias when it comes to who he's interviewing. He's not only going to interview the people that he agrees with or that he thinks his audience will agree with. So that, I mean, outside of what I don't like about podcasts, like what focusing more on what I do appreciate about good podcasts is the openness of the conversation and not being afraid to disagree, not being afraid to speak your mind, and then especially not being afraid to change your mind in the middle of a podcast. Like if you bring up a point that I agree or disagree with, I'll probably let you know, and I'll probably like just with the mental health thing. Like I don't even think we disagreed from like the crutch standpoint, but rephrasing it in a way that like, okay, this is actually what we mean. That is huge, because that's true accountability and true, shifting your mindset compared to just assuming that you meant something and being offended by that.
Well, sometimes I say it, I'm like, let's just make sure we clarify this with the crowd.
I'm big on that.
Yeah,
That's
because
huge.
I'm just like, I don't want this to come across as the wrong way. I don't see mental health as like a crutch whatsoever.
No, not at all.
It just in and of itself, it is such a hot topic. And there's lots of different ways to go.
I totally agree. And the line of work, like with accounting, that I deal with a lot of like operating agreements and business agreements and deal structures, partnership deals, and joint ventures and stuff. So the most important thing I've learned over the last few years of focusing on that type of work is clarification. Not assuming that one person means something or that the other person understands something, and even if it feels like I'm beating a dead horse on it, like let's get to the root of it and like really break it down so that everyone's actually on the same page. And if you fundamentally disagree with the like underlying truth, that's even another discussion and topic, but it's better than arguing over semantics.
That was one of the biggest things. I recently got connected with a guy through the Citadel who's an SBA mentor for veterans, and he was willing to sit down and just have a conversation. I am not a veteran, but he was willing to sit down and have a conversation, which was awesome. And as I was taking him through this contract that I was about to present, he said, "Well," he said, "Cameron, you said assume like 5 times." He's like, "Why are you assuming that?"
Yep.
Like, you're right. I need to clarify that.
Yep.
And I didn't really think through. He's like, "Well, have you considered the person, gets divorced? What happens if somebody gets divorced? What happens in this situation?" I'm like, frankly, I kind of thought the agreement I just kind of assumed that was taken care of and kind of clear. He's like, "Trust me, it's not assumed. And when you get to court, you'll have to clarify it."
Yeah, exactly.
So he was like, "Clarify it now, so you don't have to clarify it later."
And I try to I'm by no means a lawyer. Like once it gets past a certain point with me, it goes to the lawyers to get cleaned up and everything. But from the problem is a lot of times that people kind of skip that step. They go straight to the lawyers and then they don't understand what the lawyers wrote. Right. So when you're doing this deal, any deal, understanding what everyone means, understands, and how everyone sees the deal is the first step. And then drafting that up and as clear and as meticulous as a way as you can without overcomplicating it, because these agreements can be 80 pages long and then no one understands anything.
Right.
So it's like this balance. It's an art more than a science. It's a balance between simplicity and clarification, and then also not being overly complex and overly clarified.
Right.
And then at a certain point, once you agree on basic terms, then send it to the lawyers to draft in the way that they need it drafted, so that in 10 years, if they need to interpret it, they can look back, or any other lawyer can look back and be like, this is exactly what was meant.
Right.
But if you skip that, you go straight to the 60-page operating agreement, and no one actually understands what's going on, and then usually they just hand the accountant the
good luck,
and then I have to decipher it.
Yeah.
Then that's a problem. So, getting the right people involved, getting the right concepts ironed out beforehand, and then let the lawyers handle it after that. So
yeah, we're kind of in that lawyer phase right now. The guy's just he's going back and forth with little things, and to a certain degree, I get it.
Yeah.
But you're like, hey, we're ready to go. We've agreed this, but the lawyer is protective of their client, and
which is what they're paid for.
If you're going to provide legal advice, you should be very protective of your client.
Yeah.
Totally understand.
Because then it comes back on you if you weren't.
Right. But the hardest part is just knowing that you're there, but the lawyer's still doing their thing.
Yeah,
so.
And that comes with just patience. Patience is a virtue, but in deals and stuff, like if you can look at the other person and y'all mutually understand that y'all aren't holding up the deal, and then also understanding the lawyer is just doing what he's paid to do, and he is ultimately looking out for his client's best interest, and that's exactly what you want him to do. The worst case would be you have one side's lawyer is maliciously trying to attack the other side, and then your lawyer has to then be defensive. The best case scenario is that both lawyers understand that this deal needs to work for both sides, and then they're working nicely together to make sure of that. You don't want any side to be antagonistic, because that just turns into a defensive battle, and it gets expensive. The only people that win are the lawyers. So that just comes with vetting your attorney, but I can't tell you how to really do that because I haven't been successful at it.
Right. Try your best.
I've had some good ones. I've had some bad ones.
Yeah.
So.
The guy that I'm working with right now, I've really liked, because he's like, hey, for some of it, this is friendly advice. Other stuff is hourly.
Yeah.
And he's like, once we get to that point, they'll then become hourly. He's like, but a lot of this you can do on your own. I'm like,
it's really nice.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, but don't screw me over. Am I screwed if I present this this contract? So it's good to know that they're there supporting you, but also trying to provide friendly support.
Exactly.
As well.
Also finding a lawyer that's willing to build a long-term relationship with you. I did a deal with someone recently that required a lawyer, and I really felt like his fees were super fair, and it was one of the few times I've worked with a lawyer where I'm like, oh, okay. And his whole thing was I want to build a relationship with you. Obviously this shouldn't be our only deal. He charged me hourly, but it didn't do any kind of overkill on it.
Right.
It just felt very fair. And then it was clearly in the best interest of building a long-term relationship. And that's a big principle I try to abide by with deal banking in general is like I don't want to win one deal and then it's like winning the battle and losing the war. Like you want to, especially in a town like Charleston that's like smaller and you're generally going to see the same people over and over again. You want to make sure that you treat all of your partners fairly and the people that you transact with fairly, because you never know if like this person that you got a great deal on because you screwed them over also owns this building over here that you actually need to lease later on.
Right.
They're just going to get you back. Like,
100%.
and when you get into these kind of revenge games, especially in a town like Charleston, it's like, it's going to haunt you for decades. And if you find someone that's trying to do that, get away from them.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. It's so hard to vet like people and like business partners and people you go to work with or for, et cetera. It could take years, and then you're like, wow, that's who they are. And it can come out later on too, and you don't realize it. But
it's a lot of vibe checks.
Yeah.
I think you get a good gut feeling of it. You develop your gut feeling.
Once you've been beaten down a few times.
Yeah. Like, well, it's all like there are definitely personality types that, and they're very prevalent in Charleston of people that they. I'll just say, like, a lot of people act like they're in Silicon Valley and that they're doing like these crazy big deals and they're from the tech world and stuff. And if they were actually placed in that environment, they would sink completely. Like none of them actually done much, but like, because Charleston's such this, we have these like little incubation communities that are like a bunch of venture capitalists and, fund managers and stuff. But it's like, in the grand scheme of fund managers and venture capitalists, they're tiny. They're tiny little fish, and they really don't know what they're talking about. They have just grown up in this like corporate game, and they've learned how to like screw people out of a lot of money. Where again, at the end of the deal, they're the only ones that win, and it's just good business. At least what I've experienced in Charleston is not like that. Like,
it's also just not the way to live life. But
No.
to each their own. If you make a lot of money, that's awesome. But
Sweet.
That's good for you. But that's not what I would be remembered for necessarily.
A lot of these people, I feel like, you're just going from buying one house to another house. Like that, like each deal just represents another home for them.
Yep.
But again, that's a short-term game. Like the compounding interest comes from participating in deals over and over and over again with the same people, and each deal grows proportionally.
Well, especially when you build those relationships with individuals that, like, it's like no matter what you do, they're always there to support you.
Yep.
And if you screw everybody over, then who really is going to support you? You're going to have to go find new people to support you. You screw them over, it's just going to make it that much more difficult.
Exactly.
So really build those solid relationships early on, even if it's tough and you're not doing as well as you maybe want to. Think about it long term. Like, where are you going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? What kind of connections are you going to build that also I would benefit from? Same thing with myself, that you would also benefit from. And you think to yourself, well, if we build a really solid base right now in a structure, long term, this should benefit both of us, and our life should be much better off because we have each other in our lives.
Exactly.
Instead of, I destroyed that relationship and he knows half of Charleston and they're not going to work with me now.
Yeah. So. I think some people just don't care. I mean, like I think some, I'll just call them con men, because as effectively like what those kind of short-term thinkers are is like they really don't care. It's not about not caring what people think about you, because I think we should care less about what other people think about us, but to an extent, like as far as like what our political beliefs are, like certain things, to a point. But it's people that are like, they don't care if they burn a bridge, because they're just going to find another victim. Like when you're just going victim to victim, because what happens is you have these people that are from like maybe New York and Wall Street, and they come down here and they've got money to invest, and they're just trying to find like a deal to put into. A lot of times the entrepreneur is the one that gets the short end of the stick, and they're like that in that world would be the victim. Like it's someone with a fresh idea that is potentially has a lot of good growth potential, and they really want it to take off, and they're just trying to find someone that believes in them. And you could have someone that really believes in it and will back you no matter what, or you could have someone that tells you they believe in it, but really all they're looking for is like their next big hit, and they're going to tie you up and suck you dry of all of your energy and your passion, and as soon as they've gotten their payout, they're going to be on to the next person.
I think there's a lot of different ways to spot that. One of the easiest, in my opinion, is just somebody that was, for example, I've got $1 million and I want to take 75% of your business. It's a very easy way to immediately spot the kind of person they are, right?
Exactly.
Instead of talking through like what are they going to get out of it? What are you going to get out of it? What's the long-term relationship here? But as soon as somebody says, I'm going to give you this money, but I want majority of your business.
Out. Yeah, that's like one of the easier.
But for
like,
what?
Yeah, exactly.
Just $1 million? Is that it?
Yeah.
Then,
Equity is the most expensive capital that you'll raise. And it's not to say don't raise equity. Like sometimes it's no choice, or sometimes it is good because you can build a board of advisors that are also participating in the business. But you just have to make sure it's evenly sided, it's fair, and that you as the entrepreneur that has the passion, the energy, and are actually going to do the execution, that you have upside.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of the entrepreneurship. Otherwise you're just buying yourself. You're raising money to get a job, and that's usually the whole reason people are trying to do the entrepreneurial route is to get out of a job. So you don't want to just raise money and do all this work to just have another job.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest learning lessons. Was the first startup I was a part of was basically issued shares, and it was diluted dramatically.
Yep.
I had no idea what that was. Very caught off guard. And I was like, as I was leaving, I was like, oh, you issued how many millions of shares? So you're like, this is worth whatever.
Yeah.
Like I did three, I just, did lots of work for those folks. It's still a great relationship. But,
Sure.
But it's still, at the end of the day, you don't realize what's happening. And it's very frustrating long term. You're like, that, I can't believe I just spent that many years of my life doing that when the payoff was not there to begin with.
Exactly.
You just take a company from $0 to millions, and you're just like,
you didn't see that. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So but those are all things that you gotta get punched in the mouth a couple times to really realize it and see it and be like, okay, this is actually how this works.
Yep.
So
can we pause for a bathroom break?
Absolutely. Cool. Pause. So there's a lot of lessons we learned there, and I think a lot of people just gotta experience them. Yeah. In order to go to that next level.
Another topic we could go on and on about, but I think I really like Naval Ravikant. Have you listened or heard of him?
I know the name.
Maybe you've seen the name pop up. He's a venture capitalist from like Silicon Valley, but has dived more into life philosophy as he's very well retired and stuff. But
10 times over.
Yeah. He has a great book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, which was put together by, I don't remember the guy's name that actually wrote the book. I should give him credit, but he essentially compiled Naval's like tweet storms that were all about life philosophy, how to do deals, how to make long-term relationships with long-term people, and just kind of these little anecdotes that are like just very good like principles for living by. And then this guy got his permission to compile all these tweets and blog posts and things that Naval had into a coherent and consecutive book. There's illustrations and stuff of the concepts. He's been on Joe Rogan a couple times. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And but yeah, his whole thing is building long-term relationships with long-term people, the compounding effects of life, of like everything you do has compound interest applied to it. So if it's lifting, you might only be able to lift 100 pounds on the bench press on day one, and then as you get stronger, you get exponentially more gain from the amount of weight that you're lifting. So as you get, you may not be able to lift exponentially more weight, but the health benefits you get from just being able to do more from each workout, you're getting so much more benefit out of it than you were in the first workout. Money and investing, obviously compound interest applies, but relationships, like as you start building relationships and you start weeding out the bad people in your life, and maybe you only have a few good people left, those good relationships compound and grow over time to where you get more out of each individual relationship than you once did as a combined effect of all of your relationships. So I really enjoy his advice.
Something to admit, I think for a while there, I kind of considered relationships like chess pieces, and I've completely shut that off, like completely. Yeah. I've just stopped thinking about it. Yeah. Because you will overthink yourself, and you'll also think about your relationships as just pawns in a game. Yeah. And that might be a terrible thing to admit, but it was a mindset shift of like, wow, I think I'm looking to like get like something out of this person instead of build a true relationship with them.
Exactly.
And so for me, a big shift for me is just once again getting away from that altogether. Stop thinking of people as a pawn in your game You
Yep.
start thinking of them as a foundational part of your, like a relationship that's a part of your foundation.
Yep.
And your structure in your life, and making your life as much as it possibly can be, but also making their life as much as it possibly can be.
Yep.
It's a weird thing to admit. I'm thinking
Yeah,
about it.
No, it
as
makes
I'm thinking
sense.
about
Though,
it,
yeah.
like that's just what I have done before.
I think people can. It's almost. It could be almost a defense mechanism of like, if other people have treated your relationships as transactional, then you start to treat other relationships as transactional, and it's what probably breaks that cycle is what we're going back to what we're talking to about people that give, and being given things and time by mentors and advisors that means a lot to you. That starts to break down that barrier, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, that makes me actually feel like I need to give back. Because you almost feel bad for like what you're getting out of this relationship without reciprocation. But it's easy early on to be very transactional, because you're trying to climb your way out of, especially after you get out of college, you don't have as much money, or you're trying to start these things, and you're just looking for sales effectively if you're in a startup or some kind of service business. So it's easy to look at, what am I going to get out of this person? And if I'm not going to get something money wise, then it's not worth my time. But the most successful people I've been around have been the people that build their relationships and connections and worry about the money after, which is weird to say as an accountant. But and I certainly have clients and stuff that are very like, time equals money, and if it's not worth my hourly rate, then it's not worth my time. And you can definitely get there, and there's times to apply that concept, and that's something that Naval talks about too, which I really like. I'm gonna keep going back to Naval, but he talks about like, life philosophy is not algebra. So like, 1 + 1 = 2. Like if you, for some things, apply the dollar per hour principle to say like, okay, if my hourly rate's $500 and anything that gets me less than that, I'm not going to do, or anything like an Amazon return. If it takes me an hour to return something on Amazon, but I'm only getting $10 back from it, it's not worth my time. You need to be diligent and aggressive with applying that kind of principle, if that's the principle you decide to apply with personal finance or business finance. But that doesn't apply to time with your mom. Like if you're saying like, Mom, how are we going to get $500 out of value out of that? I'm not going to call her. I'm not going to spend time with it. Like, that principle doesn't apply. And it's very tricky when you're trying to apply that mindset to determine what to and not to apply it to. But that's part of learning and part of growing up. And my younger self, like I've been too aggressive with that mindset, and it probably lost out on some opportunities and some connections and some relationships because of it. And now, it's a learning experience. Now I try to give a little bit more of my time freely when I can, so that I can build those connections and relationships and make up for some lost ground. But I think it's still early on enough to be okay with doing that. If you get caught up in that and you're 50 years old, it's going to be really hard to build new connections.
I kind of hope this podcast becomes kind of that for me. It's like being able to give back and give 100%. To people as much as possible. So hopefully people get value out of it, but without expecting anything in return. It's just, I'm putting these out there, and hopefully that you find something that really helps you along in your day-to-day life.
If nothing else, it's good conversation.
It's great conversation, right? It was great, staying connected with people and all the above. What have been some of the things we've kind of talked about this, especially when we were in Dubai over a glass of wine? I remember lots of deep conversations that night, and also just lots of us getting to know each other and about our lives and our upbringings and everything else. What have been some of those, if you would like to share, things that have made you into the person you are today? Life experiences, things that have helped you to evolve and become the current form of Richard.
Yeah.
That you're willing to discuss.
Definitely. There's good things and bad things. My parents got divorced when I was 11, and they separated. It was somewhat of a messy divorce, and there was certainly some trauma there from on all sides. And there's still things of that I deal with today, just with having a good relationship with both of my parents and trying to stay, connected as a family, because you are, one of my old therapists told me, you are essentially 50% of your mom, 50% of your dad. And, they are their own individual people. So maintaining that relationship without bringing their past relationship into that is a very difficult dance that I have not mastered by any means. And it's something I try to work on constantly, is like, how do I develop and maintain a strong relationship with both without bringing the parts of them that I have to that, but also not being ashamed of, like, you know, parts of my dad that I bring into my relationship with my mom, or vice versa, because that's who I am. So that as a whole, I mean, we could go on and on about divorce and what it does and all this stuff, but ultimately made me very aware of, you know, it, through that journey, like of myself, very open about my feelings, very open about, you know, my struggles and what's going on, and kind of forced me to also develop somewhat of a family relationship with the people around me. Like, I truly do view my male friends as brothers, my female friends as sisters, and you know, and I have an older brother that I'm very close with, and so, you know, basically branching out of the kind of traditional family household and making my connections my family as well. And I think it's given me the ability to create much deeper connection with friends and people outside of my family. So, you know, for good or for bad, that happened. I went through a rough period because of that in high school. I had horrible grades. I was sleeping through classes, and eventually, you know, for lack of better terms, without getting into all the details of it, like, almost flunked out of school. I had like a less than a 2.0 GPA, and really didn't have any positive trajectory in life at that point, and was surrounding myself with all the wrong people. So had to go to boarding school for the last 2 years of high school, and missed out on prom, missed out on, you know, some of those like cherished milestone experiences. But at the same time had some absolutely incredible experiences from 16 to 18 that I think most people don't have. Like, I went through a backpacking, like, wilderness program, and backpacked in Utah for 6 months, and have a lot of backcountry experience, and saw some incredible sights and experiences there, but also went through some really difficult physical situations, like sleeping in a sleeping bag at negative 28 degrees in Utah in the middle of the winter. Like, those types of things that, like, just push your body and mind to the limits. And again, these are like kind of privileged experiences, so it's hard to be like, these are all the hard things. I mean, like, obviously people go through harder things, but those things definitely shaped just my mindset as I was growing up. And by the time I got into college, I didn't want any part of the kind of nonsense that happens in college. Didn't party much, didn't really like go out for the frats or Greek life or anything, and nothing wrong with that if that's, like, some people get great experience from that, but spent most of my time in the gym, like, and that's, you know, when touching on my bodybuilding experience, like, became a competitive bodybuilder, got my pro card, trained extremely hard for that, did 3 shows, and it was a crazy, grueling experience doing that, but it, you know, was something I was very disciplined with, and I basically just had that in school. And then that led me into my love for fitness and the gym, and turned into my first job at Exemplar Fitness on James Island back in the day, which turned into Ethos, what it is now. And Joey giving me that opportunity, and as just a front desk staff, and then a trainer, and then taking a risk on me, and when I had an interest in learning the business, and saying, like, hey, how do I get into more of like a management role? They needed an accountant, and I was like good with Excel, essentially. That was my qualification. Whoops. That was this thing.
These arms have been great, but I constantly find myself like playing around with it. I'm like, this is my fidget.
So yeah, the Exemplar, like, effectively wanted to get into management, and then Joey was like, well, we need an accountant, and my dad's a CPA, so I knew I could, like, they just needed like bookkeeping, like very basic stuff at that gym. It was basically a personal training studio with some open gym access, and so I started doing it and actually really loved it. So I switched my major at that time from exercise science to finance and business, and then eventually got my degree in commercial real estate finance. So, and that's how I really developed a lot of my Excel skills, because and kind of a non-traditional accounting path because I was dealing much more with commercial investment properties and pro formas and projections with that, and not so much with like T-charts and stuff with accounting. So there's some deficits in that like traditional accounting side, but it's made me into a phenomenal accountant for other purposes and doing the deals and building the gym, and because we needed to close Exemplar at some point and then start Ethos, and that came out of modeling the current gym, figuring out what we were spending, and then how do we do another one that's 3 times bigger. And again, art and science combined. So those were like, I mean, very brief kind of run through of those experiences, but from the divorce as a young kid to the boarding school experience in high school to the bodybuilding experience in college, getting that bodybuilding experience was really a way for me to like channel the insecurity and the kind of lack of direction that I had at that point. Like, I have no idea what I want to do. I have no idea who I am. Fitness really excited me, and it was a way for me to build confidence. Like, everyone talks about fitness, and, you know, even Arnold back in the day, like, talks about, you know, just that transformation from kind of scrawny teen to strong man, and the just like self-image that creates. It can go the wrong way. You can develop some narcissism with that, and you have to temper it for sure. But it can build a tremendous amount of confidence because you're getting good at a skill. You're applying, like, I read this, I'm going to go do it and try it out. So you're applying this like trial and error with your own body. It goes into nutrition, but again, that can turn into a negative thing as well. But for me, it was very positive. It was a good outlet, and when it started becoming negative was when I started taking myself out of it and focusing on other things. And now I do that with business, and when that starts to become a little bit negative, I'll move on to the next thing. So it's a journey. I mean, it's all kind of an evolution of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
bodybuilding was a huge part of your life, and now you're engaged to a high rockster. So you've been jumping on the high rocks train a little bit, and joining those workouts. I mean, with like the running and stuff and the conditioning, I mean, I'm just curious, like, are you planning on doing a lot more of it, or what's kind of the plan moving forward?
First time in my life where I've actually been excited to get in better condition.
Cool.
Through bodybuilding and then powerlifting and strongman. I did some Highland Games. That was all very strength focused, and I went full on into like anti-cardio, like screw cardio. I don't want to do anything that involves running.
It's not really fun.
Yeah. But what I noticed is, like, I don't have much athleticism, and I never did as a kid either. I think there's certainly a kind of genetic component to that, or even just upbringing component to it. I didn't have much. I swam when I was younger, but was not doing like track and field or anything. But yeah, I'm this first time in my life that I'm excited to get conditioned. My fiance is an incredible athlete. She's incredibly strong. She can wrestle me to the ground better than I can. And she's just a powerhouse. And I've seen her body and mindset transform over the 2 years that she's been training for High Rocks. I've seen just how much happiness it brings her, how much energy she has. And I see how light she is on her feet when she is running and stuff. And it's just, you know, the last 2 High Rocks that I saw her compete in, I was like, it was the first kind of itch that I had to get into the arena with her and be competing together and do something together and work towards it. But yeah, I mean, I need to get much better at running because I haven't run a straight mile probably since I was in high school. I've done a lot of lifting, but I think I've really neglected the conditioning and cardio aspect.
So this evolution is about to be,
we'll see.
Pretty impressive.
Hopefully, a pretty good transformation. Yeah.
Because we were talking about it the other day. It was like, it's been 2 years since, I guess technically right at 2 years since the first High Rocks, and I guess a year and a half technically, but her running and her conditioning has gotten, her cardio is just like so much better. It's insane how much better it's gotten. And mine's just kind of slowly falling off. I'm just like, I'll go and I'll run like 8 miles, and then I'll be like, I'm not gonna run for another 4 months, and so that's my biggest thing is just staying consistent with running. And I am trying to get back into more cardio, but I do like the idea of just going to the gym and enjoying the workout. Instead of having to have every single one of them be super intense.
That was my difficulty coming out of bodybuilding. Was I had a phenomenal bodybuilding coach when I was in college. I met a guy named John Defendez, and he was Mr. USA in 1988. He was like on the cover of Flex magazine and like all the old bodybuilding magazines. Has a very successful personal training company up in Greenville, and he was my mentor for years. He just took me under his wing and gave me so much time and so much knowledge. Like, he's probably forgotten more things than I'll ever know about bodybuilding and training. And he trained with all the greats, like Samir Banu, who's a Lebanese Mr. Olympia, and I'm Lebanese, so that meant a lot to me.
You mentioned 2 white guys earlier, and I was going to say you are Lebanese.
I'm Lebanese, yeah, but white skinned for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
Certainly don't consider myself a minority. But
I was going to make that comment earlier, but I was like, I'm glad he finally brought it up.
Yeah,
because you are Lebanese.
I am Lebanese. Am proud of it, but. Samir Banu was a Mr. Olympia, which for people that don't know bodybuilding, that's like the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. Right. That's like, I don't know how many winners there've been, but probably less than 20 Mr. Olympias, like real open, like men's open Mr. Olympias in history. Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of them, so everyone knows that name. But Samir Banu was a Lebanese guy, and he had an incredible physique. And one day, John Defendez got me on the phone with Samir and was just like, "Yeah, this is Richard. He's one of my athletes. Like, he's gonna be great." And Samir was like cheering me on for my competition. So cool. It was super cool. Sorry, I kind of lost the train of thought there, but no, John Defendez was an incredible mentor and coach during that time. But all of his workouts were intense, like. Warm up on shoulder day was basically a pyramid set of lateral raises, starting with 5 pounds, going up to as heavy as you could get to like a 10 rep set. So let's say, like, you know, when I was doing that, I would get up to 35, 40 pound lateral raises, and then all the way back down was just the warm up. So you got like 10 sets technically right there within, and then you would do more lateral raises. Usually 5 sets of 20 was like his favorite rep range, or 5 sets of 12, just kind of depended. Right. And then you would move on from laterals to, like, you know, he didn't do a lot of front delts because you get so much front delt activity with pressing that his main focus, and then you get a lot of rear delt work with back days. So, you know, you're basically just hammering your medial delts on shoulder day, and it would be sometimes like 30, 40 sets or more in a workout.
That's wild.
And they were intense, but I had, like, it built an incredible physique. I'm
just like a 5 sets of 10 kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
yeah, I am too.
Just get 5 sets of 10 of everything.
even now I'm like 2-3 sets, but that intensity for training, and there's articles online of his training, like they're called intensity or insanity on like some of the old bodybuilding forums, and they're just these like journal entries of basically like a novel of these workouts, and they're really impressive to read. But I built his physique, and it got me a winning physique as well. Not that I have it now, but
it was there for sure.
It was there. But no, I'm very grateful for that period. But going back to your, like, once you train that intensely, it's really hard to come out of that, because you feel like if you're not doing that, you basically shouldn't even be working out.
Right.
And then that's where I like really lost motivation for a while, was like, well, if I'm not training like a crazy person, then like why train?
Right.
And then I got into powerlifting, and that was fun, and I got injured, and every excuse in the book as to why I'm not training that hard now. But like, I feel like watching High Rocks and being able to participate and do it High Rocks with Dom gives me that little fire, that little ember is back, and I'm like, that'd be kind of cool. So last couple of days I've been in the shred shed and hitting the treadmill and the ski erg.
The setup's awesome.
It's sweet. Yeah. We love it. It's gonna get better as I put like drywall up and stuff. But first time in my life that I've like actively gotten on a treadmill and started working on getting better at running, because I always looked at it from a bodybuilding perspective, like you don't need to run to lose weight or fat.
Cardio was like stair stepper, I guess.
Not even like all his workouts were no cardio, because you're getting so much intensity and volume from the workout that you like. There's really, you're only building yourself into more of a deficit. There's some really cool kind of like deep dives I could do with that. Like Mike Menser was a really interesting influence there as well. Probably like almost opposite of John as far as his volume, because he was like anti-volume with his training, but believed in like essentially every rep or every set you do is digging yourself a little bit of a hole with recovery. So do again, minimum effective dose. Like, what is the least amount of work you can do for a desired result? Now, John didn't do minimum effective dose because you're doing so much volume and intensity. Like, he believed that was the stimulus for growth.
Right.
So, but it is still that, like, you don't want to dig a further hole in recovery with cardio, because it's just additional calorie burning. So then you take care of that portion with the diet, especially as you approach show. And these are all like really old school. Like, there's some stuff that probably science would discount, and I'm sure there's plenty of debate to be had on those topics, but interesting nonetheless. They're like very cool,
super interesting
rabbit holes.
It's amazing how much people will do, like, especially with bodybuilding, how much time, energy, and effort goes into focusing on getting your body to a certain point.
Yeah.
And I've always just been kind of like, I'm gonna be intense in the gym, but I'm not really being super scientific about it. I've just always been an athletic individual that wants to work really, really hard. But once you start to kind of realize some of those tips and tricks, you start to realize what you especially once you set your goals for yourself. It's like, what do I really want to become next? Like, what do I want my body to look like? The hardest part, though, for me has been like 3 weeks ago. I injured my shoulder playing softball, and 2 weeks into it, I'm like, all right, I feel smaller. Like, this is awful.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
So the injury, I'm trying to avoid injuries at this point in my life is like my main goal. It's just avoid injury at all costs.
Yep.
Because once if you keep getting injured, you're not going to be able to maintain it all.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's super demotivating.
Yeah.
Like, to me, injury is not necessarily even just like the recovery from injury, but also the motivation you lose from being injured, because it changes maybe you're the type of person, you or whoever is the type of person that you can get injured and then just like work everything else out and stay motivated. But majority of people, and not speaking for others, but myself, like, if I get injured, I'm very quick to just be like, I can't train. Like, I can't train the way I want. And that's the intensity of thing, is like, if I can't train the way I want to, what's the point?
Yep.
And that's something I've recognized over the last few months as on a self-correction path, is like, that can't be the mindset. And it's even having a fiance like Dom, who's like so motivated and so energetic and so supportive and positive about training. It still has to come from within. Like, no matter how many times she tells me to work out or how inspiring she is to me. And when I was bodybuilding, it was so easy to be inspired by people online and stuff, and that motivated me at that time. But maybe it's my age, or maybe it's my experience, or maybe that just like that type of motivation kind of lost its effect after a while. Right. It has to come from within. Right. And I never understood, like, when people would say they would train without music, or they would train without being excited, or they just like have, instead of pre-workout, they just have coffee or something. I never understood that when I was younger, because that would just like, all that stuff would amp me up so much. And now, after, a decade or more of training, I'm like, yeah, that stuff doesn't do much for me. Like, if I need to just be, Pavel Satuin, the kettlebell master, he talks about, like, you almost have to like clock in, clock out, and just do the work. And that's the nice thing about the shed, is like, when I go out there, I almost feel like I'm clocking. It's a bougie, like, workout shed, but I feel like I'm going into this like more kind of like rustic, like going to work thing than I do when I'm like walking into Ethos. As beautiful as Ethos is, and I love getting my workouts at Ethos when I can, usually over the weekends when I have the more luxury to do it. But if I'm just like doing more of a grind, like wake up, shake it off, get into the shed and get out, that mindset kind of sits a little bit deeper with me. So
what is with the, we're gonna change pace completely.
That's fine.
Here.
Yeah.
So the band, Carl's.
Yeah, back to music.
So you played cello growing up, you played guitar, played bass. Why do you think you've now like moved towards bass as like the instrument you want to play within a band?
definitely out of necessity. So my preference, even still playing by myself, is guitar. I just feel more connected with it. Growing up in high school, I went to the Fine Arts Center in Greenville for jazz, and did not get as much as I wanted to out of it, not because of the program, but because of my own interest in it. The music theory was more work than it was playing, and at that time I was more interested in just playing. So but it gave me a little bit of more of appreciation for jazz and blues, which is my preference for what to play now.
Got it.
And I wish I had paid more attention to it, because the guy that we were learning from was incredible, and I was just too young to appreciate those things. But that is my preference to play now, is jazz and blues. And when I'm playing by myself, or if I'm playing with Justin, those are the genres that I like to stick with. Not stick with, but like that's like the sound I feel like really I connect with. And then we were jamming together. I have another good friend, Adam, that's a brilliant pianist. Made me cry many times playing the piano. And just in random situations, just like crazy. He's an artist when it comes to piano. So, playing with him and Justin, and then our friend Maddie, we had like a kind of a quartet going, and we were playing in Ethos when it would kind of close down. I have a key because I'm a partner, so I just
I have the key.
I have the key. So I opened up the cafe, late at night, and we would come in with our instruments, and the acoustics in that like big open kind of atrium was like great. Had a little bit of reverb and echo behind it, and only better acoustics would be like if you were able to play in like a church sanctuary. It's just that big open, and there's something magical about that feeling of it. So we were playing a lot, but then our limitation was we don't have like a drummer or a bassist, and those really hold down like the tempo and the feel of the music. So we're sourcing out, like trying to find a drummer first at the very least. And I met Chris, who's the drummer of the Carls, through a mutual friend, and he was like, I'm not really looking to do more drumming, but we do need a bassist for our band. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. So kind of in parallel to that timeline, there was another great musician, Allison Forbes. I don't know if you know her from the gym, but phenomenal musician, and she's in multiple bands and groups, but she's almost like a Charleston Stevie Nicks, like just incredible singer, and also just a great artist. She invited me to play in a group with her for a wedding that they were doing. But again, they had like 3 guitarists, so they didn't, or 2 guitarists, but they didn't need another. But they said I could play the bass. So I bought a bass, and never played the bass before, but I played the cello. And from was it School of Rock, that turn it side, cello, it's a bass. So I like picked up the cheapest bass I could find and the cheapest bass amp, and was practicing with this wedding band, and was like, this is kind of fun. And then at the same time was playing with Chris and Drew. Drew's the guy in the morph suit at the Carls, and
he is the statement piece.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. He's the visionary. Yeah. It was just fun, and then started getting better and better, and the music shop, Yield Music, I think it's Yield Music Shop in West Ashley. It's like an old shop, I think family owned. The guy actually let me trade in my cheap bass amp and cheap bass for an upgrade, which helped me out a lot when I was playing the wedding, and then getting more serious about it. It was like, because the level of instrument you just have more expression. It just sounds better. Right. It reacts better to what you're doing. You get a better feel, and it just, the sound alone makes all the difference, and it makes you want to play more because you actually sound better. There's like a big thing when I was playing the cello growing up was like, you start out with a rental instrument, and it's like a few $100, and it's it's a huge risk for a parent to buy a cello for their kid, because good cellos start at $1,000 minimum, and that's not even a good cello. Right. Like, so before they buy you that like lifetime piece, you start with a rental, but then it sucks to practice because the strings are, the action on the strings is too high, and it sounds screechy, and it can turn a lot of kids off to it. So I was very lucky to like go into the music shops and play like really nice instruments in that kind of process to be like, oh, this is what I have to look forward to. And then eventually essentially earned my way into having a nicer instrument.
Right.
Same thing with guitar. And then this with the bass. Start with the cheap kind of shitty instrument and then go into the
Make
nicer
sure you're actually
version.
gonna stick with it first.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a huge investment.
Yeah.
But if you're going to invest, my bass setup, it's not even that expensive compared to other people's, but it's $1,000 like for the amp and the bass, and that's not nothing
Right.
to invest in an instrument that could risk just sitting on your wall.
Right.
And it looks pretty.
It's like the same thing here. Like I told myself I was not going to spend a lot of money on it until
Yeah.
I actually started doing them.
Yeah.
Got to like 20. I was like, okay, we're going to introduce some new mics.
Exactly.
Get to the next level. You start
Exactly.
to introduce other stuff.
And it keeps you motivated too, because
Yep.
the production sounds better, and then you sound better, and then it makes you more interested in the craft.
Right.
So you don't always want to be just like jerry rigging it, but you want to do that at the beginning to make sure that you're serious about it. And
What's the vision for the Carls? What's the plan?
I would.
Or y'all just really enjoying it?
I think we all have like individual visions. I don't think we've actually even discussed it, but my vision would be actually being able to go on tour and play like some really, like, I would love to like kind of 5-year plan. I'd love to open for like a really well-known like band and just play in front of 10,000 people. And that's like, that gives me excitement. Like,
Sick.
It'd be sick.
Seems like y'all are all jiving super well too, which is good.
Yeah. It's funny, like on stage, we just get into this, it's almost like a flow state, like we're dancing around, and like sometimes stuff happens that kind of brings you out of that.
Yep.
Like we unplug a guitar by accident or something, but there's been like certain shows that we've had that just feel like out of body experiences where you're like, this is crazy, and then you're done with the show and you like feel like you've waken up from a nap, and that is such an addicting feeling. And that's what I love about performing. I performed in an orchestra and a symphony when I was growing up.
Yep.
I did drama and acting in school, so I love that stage presence. And Carl's is that outlet for me where I feel like a different person.
Right.
Like, and that's Dom always says that too. And like people that come and see me are like, they see me at work and they see me on stage and like, who is this person?
You definitely open up. Like it's
Yeah.
and not that it's like a different type. It's just like who you truly are is being expressed.
Yeah.
Up there versus like what we are on the confines of like our daily jobs, which frankly is nothing wrong with that. It's just like you also don't deserve to see me like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious because Drew, like the lead guy in the morph suit, is a tax attorney, and then Justin has a corporate job.
Yep.
Maddie is a speech pathologist. Drew is or Chris is a Salesforce consultant and does a lot of technology stuff. So it's funny because like we're all very like corporate and serious and very good at our jobs. Right. And then we come out of this like, and a lot of our songs are like silly and fun, but we try to make them epic. Yep. Like we have funny lyrics and stuff, but when we're creating a song, it's also cool because we all come from different musical backgrounds. Yep. Like Justin's very into like metal and progressive metal, and I listen to that stuff, but I don't play it. And I play jazz and blues, and Maddie sings like at a gospel church. Right. And Drew and Chris like grew up in the 80s, so they're like into that type of music. And Drew loves like soul and stuff. So we all have these different musical elements, and we all Justin said it best, is like we try to just make each of our parts as cool as possible.
Right.
And like Drew comes up with an idea. He's like, this is the chord progression. This is the idea. Every now and then we'll have like some small tweaks to be like, oh, this would fit a little bit better here or there. But most of the time we keep it pretty core to that structure. And then we layer it in over probably like 2 months. Like I'd say like over an 8-week period of practicing once a week, we can get it to like kind of where it's going to be when we're performing it. And I think the overarching goal, and it's an unspoken goal, is just make each of our parts as cool as possible. Right. And there's times where we're in the recording studio where like Drew will say to me like, oh, I never like listened to the bass part, that's sick. Or like same with like Justin's solos are always epic. So but yeah, like little
Justin
things.
just rips, and you're just like, dude, how do you? He sat here a number of times, and I'm just like, how do you do that?
Yeah,
And I've always
super
been
impressive.
so amazed with people's ability. And at the time, I had a friend living with me, and he would play, and Justin would play, and they'd play back and forth.
Yep.
I was like, man, that is so cool. But then Justin would just rip, and we both just stop and look at him and be like, where are you going?
Where is this happening?
What is happening right now? But it is super cool, and also it's cool to see you. And I've been to 1 or 2 of y'all's concerts now.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to see y'all in your element.
Yeah,
and just be like, yep, that's who.
It's super fun.
That's like them coming alive.
Yeah.
Which is always amazing.
If there was a scenario where I could like quit my day job and I would never stop doing business and stuff, but if I eventually could just become a consultant and like just let other people kind of do the data entry and administrative work, like, and I could actually just tour doing music. I mean, that would be the dream. Like, that'd be sick.
I'll admit too, if I could do a podcast every single day for the rest of my life,
it'd be sick. Like, why would you do anything else? Like, eventually you want to go outside, but
do a podcast outside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, I think touring would be like just so sick, and that would be the story I would want to be able to tell my kids and grandkids. And I have a friend that started a band in Charleston, Whitehall, and you may have heard of that, maybe not, but they opened for the Foo Fighters, I think.
That's
it was
awesome.
like epic. And then they all moved up to New York, and they're working like kind of blue collar jobs while their basically main thing is the music and trying to make that come alive.
So
and
cool.
I don't know if I wouldn't quit unless it was like, oh, we have like a record deal.
Right.
But I think the pursuit again is the exciting part.
Absolutely.
Like, the next step for us is, can we play Music Farm? Can we play the Refinery? Can we play we're playing again, and this is our second show we'll do in New York. So we played in New York last year at a bar called Pianos, and then in May we have another show in New York.
Is that your next
at Pianos again?
Is that the next performance?
That is the next gig. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's May 16th. Yep.
Cool.
So
when's the next Charleston gig?
I think we have a Royal gig. I'm horrible
love
at the
Royal
calendar
gigs.
and stuff, but I think it's like our third time at Royal.
Cool. I think I was there.
That's fun.
I think I was there for your first Royal gig.
Yeah, the first one was the best one.
Yeah.
Second time we had some misses, some technical issues with our sound, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of a redemption on this next one. But
Cool.
It is cool getting to play there because that's like where people would go in college, and like you just see that in the Charleston scene, and then you're like, I'm on that stage.
The
so cool.
Royal is just like the coolest spot. Too.
Yeah.
It's sort of an outdoor area, indoor, and it's just like it is so much. It's very much so itself. Like it's never really changed.
Yeah.
And I love that they've just kept it so familiar. The well, I had a follow-up question to that too, but no,
That's fine. Yeah.
Absolutely love Royal American. So, what else is going on?
It's tax season, so as an accountant, but I don't prepare tax returns, so I'm lucky to dodge that. But with my clients, I do prepare their like end of year books.
Yep.
So I prepare those books and then send them to the appropriate CPAs that are preparing the returns. So it's been a very busy season for that,
Yep.
and Dom has been very supportive and patient with my late hours and long hours and stuff. Ethos is, through the grapevine, people probably heard we're doing a Mount Pleasant location, so that's been in the works, and we're working very hard at that. And then it's just kind of a daily. The beauty of what I do is that there's not much. It's a bad thing too. There's not much consistency. Like every day looks a little bit different. It depends on what my clients need, what they have going on, new ideas, new startup ideas, new partnership ideas, or if it's like working harder in the business and getting to certain numbers or KPIs that they need to focus on to get their business back on track or to do better or to scale. So every day is a little bit different, and I love that about what I do.
Yep.
It's super fun. So just been busy with that. That's been main
I
focus.
Tax season for the CPA.
Yeah. Luckily, like I said, I'm not tax preparer, and so it's easier than some other accountants are going through, but it probably adds about 50% of a workload, because you're doing the day-to-day on top of clients and other CPAs and stuff asking for these financials for the return, and so you have to kind of play both roles.
Right.
And for any given client, it may even double the amount of time I spend on that client in a given month. So it's trying to get those done by the April deadline and not have many extensions, if any. And if you can get there, then you have kind of a cruising period through from April to, the September, October kind of deadlines that you start coming up on. So, yeah, it's fun, but
I know what I was going to say. I was going to say that the Carls has such a, this is how my brain works. Right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Jumps
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah.
People are probably like, I can't follow this podcast. This
Like,
is all over the place.
where are they
is
going?
it going with this?
Okay.
But the Carls has such a unique sound. And that's been something for me. It was like when I think about a new band or like trying to find a different sound. There are not many bands you find that are like that unique, and singer's voice unique, and the approach is unique. It is like truly a unique experience.
Yep.
And at first, when I was listening to y'all's songs, like regardless of supportive, but it was just kind of like, what is going on here? Like what is? It's taking my mind in a different direction.
Yeah.
And now that we've had this conversation, I'm like, they did this on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, this is all on purpose.
Yeah.
And I like that because you're truly like you're finding something completely new for the first time.
Well, like again, because all of us come from different genre backgrounds, it's like we, as a musician, like for me, I like hear something from a song and I'm like, ooh, I want to try that. And so then the next song we play, I'm usually just trying to implement that into it.
Right.
And it may just, that sometimes goes outside the lines of what is expected in that song or what fits in that song, because like it's just something I like. It's something that I want to try, and I'm gonna kind of like force a square into a round hole, right? And like I think that's what we do a little bit. I think like I said, Drew and Chris are like from a very like 80s focused background. Right. So and Drew's like a savant when it comes to music in general. Like he could name you every artist and every song and what albums those songs are on, and I can't do that at all. Like I can barely rattle off my favorite artists because like I just know the sound of the songs that I like, and I can't tell you like what all the songs on my playlist are.
My least favorite thing is when somebody would be like, "You don't know that artist?
Yeah,
you haven't heard of them?" I'm like,
I've probably heard of them, but if you'd have to play
the song for me,
song,
I'll know it based off the song, but I don't know their entire family lineage.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's great. Like I've always been a play by ear musician, so like even when like there's a picture of me at 2 years old playing the piano, and my mom's like always told me like you were playing the commercial jingle that you had just heard, and it was crazy. And not that I was playing it well, but I was like picking out the tune,
right?
And it's still what I do as a musician, and it makes me probably not as technically proficient as other musicians, but and it also makes me very bad again at naming songs or telling you the lyrics to a song or who the artist is, because I get addicted to types of sound versus like those types of things, whereas Justin like can tell you a lot of times like exactly who wrote a song, why they wrote it, how they came up with this certain method and like what technical thing they're doing to do it, and he can implement it and he can play it. So there's a lot of like the band has so many strengths between each person, and then it like all comes together in this like awesome meld of different sounds and shapes and stuff. It's super cool.
It's just like mind blowing.
But it's like it's hard to tell people what our band sounds like, because they're like, oh, what kind of music is it? And we usually say like punk rock. Yeah. But it's like so much more than that. It's not just like blast your head off rock. It's like it's got other elements
to be able to hear a tune though, or a jingle, and then play it on another instrument. Mm-hmm. It has always been a wild conversion for me, just from watching somebody do that, hearing somebody do that. It's like you can feel that, and then you can go convert it to something else. Yeah. And I've got a few now. I have more friends that I know that can do that, and it's just super cool to watch them interact. And so the individual that I was kind of working with throughout COVID, Ryan, I would basically say, this is what I'm hearing in my mind, and like then I would kind of like sing it and or hum it, and then you play it on guitar. I was like, how did you do that? Yep. Like, that is such a cool talent and skill set. Talk about picking up chicks. Like, I mean,
unfortunately, most of the time you just pick up other dudes. Like that's really what happens.
Unfortunately, it's literally guys like this are like, man, that is such a cool skill.
Well, it's like the same thing on bench press. Like you get to bench 225, you expect a bunch of girls surrounding.
Ladies are gonna love this.
It's all the guys. So like, yo, what do you bench? That's sick. It's the same thing. Guitar is the exact same
true,
thing.
though. And maybe it's just like as we've gotten older, too, it's become worse and worse and worse. Like you go do something, you're like, that was awesome. Yeah. You're like, bunch of dudes around me.
It's
That's
the
great.
same thing with cars. Are the same thing too.
Yeah.
You think you're gonna get a sick car, and like girls are gonna love it, and you just have a bunch of dudes being like, "Oh, like what kind of car is that? It's sick." Like, it's such as life.
Kind of engine you got, bro.
Exactly, such is life.
That's
but,
so true.
Oh
gosh,
man.
To go back and be 10 years younger and be like, listen, this is what's gonna be like.
I would like
next
that's.
10 years.
I think about that. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Of just like, what would I tell my younger self? Because there's a element of like you don't want to avoid too many mistakes because that's why you're where you are today. But I think a lot of it relates to what we've already talked about. Of like a lot of my advice to my younger self would be how to treat relationships, because I don't think I would be in any worse of a place if I treated all my relationships better. So like there may have been
or with more understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
There may have been actions I would have taken differently, but like maybe I wouldn't want to change those because it would have changed my trajectory in some way. But I don't see any way where treating my relationships better or not treating certain things for granted or like paying a little bit more attention to this or that. I don't think those would have had any adverse effect on me. Like it because the decisions I made, maybe I could make some changes and it would, butterfly effect to my current life. But just the consideration of others, like I don't think there can be a negative effect of that. So that would be my advice to the younger self for sure.
I keep referring to David Goggins' cookie jar because if you think about all the things you've accomplished up to this point,
what is that? Like I've heard that analogy.
So basically he just refers to the cookie jar and says, like, like whenever you're in a down, like if you're just super low or depressed or whatever, it's like, go back to your cookie jar and pull out an accomplishment. And think about something you've done well over the past however many years, and just think, okay, I've done that. I've done these things. I might not be in a great spot right now. I might be at like a super low spot right now. And I just personally, like, there have been times over the past year where I've been like, what am I doing? Like, what's really going on? Am I really doing what I should be doing with my life? And so I'm like, it's a good reminder just to go back and be like, hey, your younger self would be proud of you. Like, you've done these things.
Exactly.
You've got to this point. You know these people. Like, don't think about it from like just a money perspective, right? I think I'm constantly doing that too, where I'm like, how much money have I made? And it's like, it's not everything. It is a huge part of it, but it's not just because you're not you don't have $1 billion at our age does not mean that you're not where you need to be. You're exactly where you need to be if you consider it like that.
Yeah. So. Money is a hard subject for everyone, but it's like, you want to balance between being driven to make more, certainly, because it is a metric. It shouldn't be the metric. It definitely, how much money you've made does not tell you how good of a person you are or how good of a life you have. And that, everyone says money can't buy you happiness, or there's plenty of millionaires with that are miserable, and there are. But that's because it is a metric, not the metric. If you discount money and be like, I could be happy without it, if you can, great. But you need food, shelter, and why can't I remember the third hierarchy of needs?
Entertainment.
There's that. I don't know why I can't remember the third. It's not, isn't it?
Food, shelter, water. I mean, like
food, shelter, water.
Yeah.
Jeez.
The basics, but yes.
I said food, shelter. I think I just forgot water.
I think instead of water, we just include entertainment. From now on.
Entertainment.
Food, shelter, and entertainment. You will die soon.
You need those things, and if you can't provide those things to yourself, and you need money to provide those things. So, but yeah, it goes back to not using money as the only metric. It's a metric. But then comparison is the thief of joy and all of those kind of cliches. But it can certainly be easy to get down on yourself because there's always going to be a bigger fish. There's always someone that has made more money than you or is currently making more money than you. And there's going to be periods of your life where you're actually losing money faster than making it. And you have to figure out why that is happening. It's not necessarily always a bad thing, but sometimes life comes at you and you have to accept that you're going to face some losses. And I think a juvenile perspective of investment in general and the growth of money is that you see a good month and the brain will say, oh, you've gotten a 20% return on your net worth this month. If that happens every month, you'd be a billionaire by the time you're 60. And it's just like not how life happens. That's why the average of the S&P is between 8 and 12%. Even though we've had 25 and 30% years in there, and we've also had horrible losses. We've had recessions and depressions during that time, but the average is the 8 to 12, and that's what you're shooting for. But that average doesn't prepare you for the year, the month, or the
That you lose
the
90% of
period
your net worth.
that you lose everything. And that's another Naval perspective of like, if I lost everything today, have I developed the skills to rebuild it in half the time?
Yep.
Because otherwise you're just gambling.
Right.
Like, there's plenty of people that have won because they got lucky, they met the right person at the right time, they made the right deal, and they made the biggest win of their life. And some of those people save that and they just live on that, and some people just keep rolling the dice, and there's going to be a point where they lose all of it.
Yep.
But if you've gambled the whole way and you haven't actually developed a skill to build it, if it goes to zero for whatever reason, you're not going to be able to rebuild it, or it's going to be a gamble, or a statistical anomaly that you rebuild it. Whereas if you've built the skills to do it, there's a much stronger likelihood that you can get it back.
Right.
Not a guarantee, but
Right.
a much stronger likelihood.
The game of risk is such a weird, interesting one, and until you've actually fully put everything on the line, I don't think you really realize how intense things can get, especially if you're risking everything after making a bunch of money, and then you're like, I'm risking it all in this one deal.
Yep.
And kudos to those that can actually do it, but at the end of the day, it's like once you get to that point, maintaining is huge. You probably should maintain.
Yep.
But that one deal comes along, it's like, well, you know what, I know my abilities. I'm going to go and take this chunk of change. I'm going to put it into this opportunity, and I know it's going to work out. When it doesn't, though, you should hopefully have the skill sets to be able to get back in the game and keep going. But the one thing I have, just back to this point, one thing I've realized through taking risks and trying new things and having conviction and being very stubborn in what I want to do. It's like I want to do these things. But being consistent has been one of the biggest parts of that too, and consistently staying in the game.
Yep.
Because as soon as you get out of the game, then it's hard to get back in. Because you're like, I don't want to get back in the game. I don't want to go back and do those things. I just want to go get something that's comfortable and maybe pays me on a month, but whatever it is. But once you get out of the game, it's very difficult to get back into.
You lose the relationships and the connection. Like if you're in the game, and the gym is the same way. Like getting out of the gym and having a period of not training, and coming and trying to come back in, and I'm experiencing that, or I have experienced that over the last few years, is like you lose that. Like maybe I could train with someone 2 years ago that I can't train with now because they're so much farther ahead of me, and maybe they would like train with me and like tone it down a little bit. But like for me, like I've lost that competitive edge, or like I've lost that ability to keep up at a high level. And if business is the same way. If you come out of it for a period of time because you're like tired of the stress or you're tired of the risk, and because the mentality is always like I can always come back to it. If you've lost, you lose that compounding again. Like if people have stayed in the game, they're exponentially farther ahead of you. They're not on a linear path. Like you can't just like skip here and end up here. They're going to continue to exponentially grow, building relationships and connections, figuring out better structures for deals, figuring out better ways of funding deals and stuff like that. And if you just come in and you haven't been paying attention, it's like going from like 6th grade to 12th grade and trying to catch up and figure out what you missed.
Absolutely.
And that happens in business. Like you're constantly learning and evolving in business and doing these deals. If I was structuring the deals that I'm structuring today 6 months ago, they would crash and burn because I know so much more even 6 months later because I've been forced to learn on the job, and develop those connections or relationships, and I've just seen more. And if you look at that on a 10-year scale, and then the next 5 to 10-year scale, 40-year-old me is going to be so much farther ahead. And if I stop at any point, or if the people I'm surrounded with stop at any point and try to catch up, then they're going to be left behind.
Absolutely.
And at a certain point, you have to know when to pass the baton. That's when people do go into more venture capitalist stuff or more consulting businesses, is they do want to be out of the game, but they still want to participate and pass on whatever knowledge they do have. But now you pass it on to the person that has the energy to keep running. Whether you're an Olympic athlete and you just become a coach, and now you're passing it on because you can't keep doing the world records, but someone that can, and you want to see them grow. You become excited about their growth. And that's like the 20-year goal.
It's the ultimate fulfillment.
Yeah, 100%. I by no means want to be there next year. I want to be there when I'm 60, and my kids want to start something, and I have the tools and the resources to help them. And I know what kind of risks they should be comfortable with, and know that they have my support behind it. That's huge for sure. And it's to your points as well. The last thing that I had was like taking measured risks, and sometimes it's at the beginning point of entrepreneurship. You have to put it all on the line because that's all you have. But at a certain point, you should build enough wealth and enough connections to where that's the beauty of joint ventures and of partnerships, is that you can share a little bit of risk, so something that can still have the same upward growth. You're all along for the ride, and none of you are going to go to zero or lose your jobs, your families, your health because of it. And that peace of mind is worth losing a little chunk of it for, at least at this point in my life and what I know about entrepreneurship. There is definitely, like, I think some people are like, no, you either do everything solo, like solopreneurial gigs, or nothing. No partnerships, because partners suck and it's like a legal battle and all this stuff. But I think the other side of that is shared risk allows it to where no one's at risk of going to zero. Like maybe each of you are still at risk of losing 50% of what you own, but like you're not going to be out of the house.
Like, you can actually still stay in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
And back to the staying in the game too, because 08-09 crash for my family was rough. And when you see everything taken, you're just kind of like, well, how do you get back into the game after that? And I didn't really realize any of that at the time. You just kind of watch it unfold, and then you look back and you're like, I can't imagine how tough that is when you're like trying to support a family and then also go through that. So kudos to my family,
to the parents,
my parents for sticking it out,
for sure,
which has been super cool. But also, and I now appreciate it a lot more than I did at the time. But it took my dad out of the game. And I think that is, to your point, is like you want to stay in the game for as long as you possibly can, and you can still get back in the game even after that. But when you have family and things to take care of, it's very difficult to just keep taking those same risks.
It's really hard.
Take the measured risks and partner with the right people. It's more of a just gut feeling. But.
And hold off on, not that this is your parents' situation at all, but like people that sometimes get kicked out of the game is like they have so much lifestyle inflation in the form of kids, family, cars, houses. Like they upgrade so quickly that there's not much margin left. They're over leveraged in the point where like if they lose any portion of their income, they would have to downgrade the lifestyle. And so something I've tried to do throughout my whole 20s is like live way below my means, give plenty of room for crashes and burns, and luckily, knock on wood, I haven't experienced too many of those, but also don't have to worry about, like, with all these little ventures and stuff, like I don't have to worry about if one of them goes to zero, my lifestyle changing at all. Now if everything crashed, have to figure something out. But being aware of lifestyle inflation, being aware of the milestones of life. Like I think some of us with our generation, it's like kids might be a few years later, bigger house might be a few years later, family might be a few years later. Like there's some of those milestones might have to be pushed a little bit farther down the timeline than maybe we conceived when we were kids. But we live in a different economic environment. We live in a time where like both the man and woman generally work, and you're combining incomes, but because of inflation and economic, economic situation, that doesn't go as far as it used to. So you have to figure out like, when can we take care of a kid? And if one of us has to quit our jobs to do that, like how much can I stretch that? Like where's our margin of safety is effectively. So there's like a margin of safety you have, there's a margin of investment that you have, and you just have to be planning for those things, and just being aware of it is the first step. I think like you and I probably overly pay attention to those things because that's like what we're interested in. But I think there's a lot of people around us that could benefit a lot from just the first step is just like looking at your bank statement, being aware of where your money is going before you even think about investing, like before you even think about a business. Like be aware of where your money is going and give every dollar a job. And that's like the best way to start. And if you can do that and you can manage your own, checking account, then you can start looking at investing. You can start looking at, building things, building wealth, building assets, compared to just having a bunch of liabilities and
You're,
expenses.
I mean, obviously, you're just like much smarter with your money than I ever probably will be. Frankly. And I'll just be the first to admit that. And
Probably
throw it out
not,
there.
yeah.
No, but my biggest thing has always been just like kind of risk it all and hopefully it works out, sort of thing. And that's just always been my mindset.
Sure.
Go all in on something and hopefully it works. But then I quickly mid-20s realized I was like, I need some kind of backup plan. I was like, so the house is a good, if just in case if things were to hit the fan, I could sell the house. If I could get some money out, we
Sure.
could go on, not live in a box, but live below our means if we needed to. But the first purchase I made that was one of those where I was like, this is a ridiculous purchase was the vehicle. And I was like, why did I just do that? I was like,
Yeah.
that was totally unnecessary. The car,
Sure.
my other car was paid off. It's like, why would you go why would you buy a car like that just because? But I've also now realized it's because I wanted it for myself. There's a lot more than just having the vehicle to have the vehicle. It's like, I wanted to show appreciation for what I had accomplished.
Yep.
So I bought the vehicle.
Yeah.
But now just looking back on it, you're kind of like, were all those the best ideas? It doesn't matter. Frankly, go out, grind a little harder, go make some more money, whatever. But go and celebrate yourself too.
You have to reward yourself along the way. I mean, that to me is, buying doing the shred shed. Like Dom and I decided to make the financial decision to buy a shed and put gym equipment into it, which seems completely counterintuitive because I'm a partner in a gym and we have access to that gym every single day. Like why do we need to spend that much money on that? And part of it's an investment in her production and her company. And, she's able to create more content there. She's able to train 4 high rocks at home. We can have people over and work out. We don't have to worry about, I don't have to worry about that affecting Ethos.
Right.
But the other part of that is it's just a cool thing to do and have, and we're investing in our health, and we're there's something like it brings you joy.
Yeah.
Same thing with my guitars. Like I've been lucky and been gifted some guitars. So some of my favorite guitars have been I haven't had to pay for, but I have invested in my equipment and stuff. And it's like the first time I had a personal training client, like I wasn't wise with my money at that time, and went out and bought a guitar amp with the month of income that they had just given me. But I love that guitar amp. It's a beautiful like vintage guitar amp, and I'm like I haven't missed that $500.
You're gonna bring a lot of joy to yourself, but also to other people for playing with that guitar.
Exactly. So there's definitely a enjoyment, lifestyle, and comfortability that as you get older, you're going to want to afford yourself more comfort. There's going to be a point at which, like flying is a good example of this. Like there's going to be a point at which you're no longer actually comfortable flying economy. And it has nothing to do with like being pretentious. It has nothing to do with just not wanting to slum it. There's just a point at which like your body hurts and you really want to be flying business or first class for flights over a certain duration, because otherwise it is so uncomfortable and you're going to be spending more time recovering from the trip than enjoying where you're going.
Absolutely.
If you're going to an important business meeting and it's in New York, maybe it's only a 2-hour flight from here, but like if your back hurts and you get there and you're not as clear and sharp, have you just like ruined that business meeting? Right. There's definitely like trade-offs when it comes to buying luxury and spending that money on luxury. I'll be the first person to say like Ethos is not the cheapest gym membership in town. But some people are willing to pay for that little extra comfort because it makes that much more of a difference in their health and wellness routine than it does to go to like a chain gym that's significantly cheaper. Obviously, like we're not competing with those gyms.
And the other huge part of that too is the people and
exactly
the connections you're making and building, et cetera. I've said that a million times. Like you're building relationships with people that actually care first and foremost about their health and wellness, but they also care about building relationships with the people that are, say, it's not even like a higher caliber. It's just a kind of person that cares deeply about these things
100%,
and wants to build great connections and solid relationships. Whereas like if I go to Planet Fitness, it's great for working out if that's all I'm into, but I'm also around like high schoolers and I don't really know that's the environment.
People really, I've heard people talk about like kind of downplay the social aspect of a gym, or even say they don't want the social aspect of a gym, which is fine.
Didn't go.
You're okay. Like I'm okay that you have that opinion. Investing in those social connections is sometimes like the make or break it point of being a healthy, happy person. Like if you are surrounding yourself with like-minded, positive people and immersing yourself in a community, like the likelihood of you falling off of that is so much lower. And like you're gonna get enjoyment out of it. You're gonna make connections. Maybe you meet your best friend there. Maybe you meet your wife or husband there. Maybe you make a connection that turns into a business deal that, you know, changes your life.
Right.
And you're lost at what to do otherwise. Like the chances of that happening in a different gym or a different setting is so small compared to just being surrounded by immersed in such a good community. You know, if that's a value to you, then that charge is worth it.
Which is really, once again, it's like the unspoken about ethos, right? It's like not just building a community, but you're building that kind of community, and people feel that and they realize that. And I've had, I don't know how many people on the podcast from Ethos that go to Ethos as well. They're also just like friends, but also happen to also go to Ethos, and you're like, that's cool that we're all building that. But yeah, great gym.
Yeah,
huge shout out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it changed my life. I mean, I'm a partner in it, but you know, Joey is the founder, and he really had a vision for it. And I went from college kid that wanted a free gym membership at the gym that we had before this, and wanted to get into bodybuilding and wanted to get into personal training. And he gave me the opportunities that I have that now have made me the CFO and the financial director. And it's made me grow so much as a person. I haven't gotten to work out as much as I would like to.
So I got the tread check.
Ironically. Yeah. But it's changed me as a person. It's just built so much confidence within myself. Right. It's put me around so many positive, good people. It's provided me lifelong friendships. I'm surrounded by just, you know, we had my birthday party the other day.
Yep.
The thing that I kept coming back to was like, if my 8th grade self could see the people, the caliber of people, but also just in general, the amount of people that I'm surrounded by that would show up to my birthday, you know, and celebrate and dance and just be free. And like, I wouldn't have believed it. It seems like a pipe dream. So it makes me very proud. And I do owe, I'd say 99, if not 100% of that to Joey. Like he's an Ethos. It's incredible. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good note for us to wrap up on, frankly. Lots to be appreciative of, lots that was discussed tonight, wide range of topics.
For sure.
And what's interesting, too, is that you and I both know we could have gone probably 3 hours on each one of those topics.
Yeah.
And that is super cool, and I appreciate that about our friendship, and which kickstarted in Dubai over a glass of wine, which is kind of funny. But that was after we actually competed, too.
Yes.
But
that was a fun trip.
Also just interesting.
Lifelong memory.
Interesting experience too, and learned a lot about other cultures. And I'd kind of been to the Middle East before, but not, you know, Cyprus, which then was led to Israel and some other things. But the UAE was just a different.
It's a wild place
world altogether.
And each of the Emirates are supposed to be different as well. And I think we could have also talked about Dubai a little bit, but it's a beautiful, cool place.
I think we need to do another trip.
Yeah.
And then
come back. Yeah, exactly.
If you're down.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Heck yeah.
I'll meet you there.
We're going to fly first class.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you buying?
Yeah. Maybe if one of these businesses takes off, I'll buy.
Let's get one of the businesses that we're working on to really take off. And then in 5 years, we'll be like, that was sick. We talked about that 5 years ago. Cool. Well, I appreciate the time. Looking forward to releasing this.
Thanks for having me on, man. I really
look
appreciate
forward
it.
to the next episode, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's been really good talking to you, man.
Good stuff.
Sweet.